Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we are updating the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline into this monstrosity that you can see here. If you have not already, make sure to go back and watch my original video on the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline where I went over that. However, make sure to note that there are very many incorrect portions, which is mainly what I'm going to be going over in this timeline. I have fixed each of the things that I have identified in the first video and in the first timeline and recreated it into this new Sonic the Hedgehog timeline that includes every single installment in the entire series. So before we get into it, I do want to mention a few things. First off, I'm not trying to claim that this is exactly true. There's never been an official or confirmed Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. This is simply my representation of it. And also, I don't want to claim that all of these theories and this and everything that I've included is all my own and from my own ideas. So I do want to give a few special thanks because of that. First off, we have Diego Ureta, whose timeline was my main reference for making this one, and his timeline will be linked in the description right down below if you want to go check that out, and also a channel known as Blazing, who commented on my original video and noting many of the things I got wrong and being able to correct them and letting me know what to actually change. However, the channel has since been deleted so you can't view it, or the comments on the original video. However, I actually pasted them into a document that you can see right here, and I will be referencing this throughout the video and each of the things that they have said. Just want to give them a special thanks as well for all of this. So to start off, I'm actually going to go through a few of the things that they mentioned that we changed from the first one, which was just that his planet was never called Mobius, it was just Earth, and he did live on Earth. It's just that Mobius itself is Earth, but way in the future when all of the Mobians, or Sonic, and the rest of the characters have inhabited that in the main canon. So it was mainly just called Mobius in the comics. And when he travels to Earth from somewhere else, that's in Sonic X, which is not in the same universe. But Mobius was also actually mentioned in Sonic Spinball, where it simply says that that's the planet Sonic is on. However, we don't know whether that is a different planet from the main one. And also, in the original timeline, I actually had it so that the movie timeline that we can see right here, with the Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the Knuckles TV show, I had this so that it was actually a timeline split from the main timeline in which Sonic would have actually traveled back in time. But that is not true. And the split that caused the difference between these two universes is actually something unknown, and at the beginning when he traveled with his rings, he simply traveled through space, not through time, which is what they mentioned in these sentences right here. So just going through this paragraph, I'm going to read this excerpt from it. It says, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog is actually in the timeline where Sonic wins. So what this is actually referring to is, once again, in the original video and in the original timeline, which we can see right here, I actually had a timeline split taking place after the original Sonic the Hedgehog game of whether he is actually successful or defeated, and I had Sega Sonic the Hedgehog taking place if he was defeated, since in the game you start out having been trapped by Dr. Eggman. However, problem is there is actually a cutscene at the beginning which shows Sonic running away from and being captured by Eggman, which those events were never seen in the original Sonic the Hedgehog game, so there's no proof to say that this takes place in a split timeline after this. So they mentioned this as well and said that he would have had the Chaos Emeralds had he won in the first Sonic the Hedgehog game. However, he never used them in, say, Sonic the Hedgehog. And also, if Eggman Island was about to explode at the end of the game, why wouldn't he have taken the emeralds with him? When he is trying to escape, we don't see him with any of the emeralds, which means he likely didn't have them. But then they said in this game, Eggman outran Sonic, and we can see him doing so right here, and we can see what he used to do. It was this big machine that he was able to outrun and capture Sonic with. But they use this to say that later in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he makes shoes that allow him to run faster than Sonic. However, they use this to claim that that would mean that Sega Sonic the Hedgehog would have to take place after Sonic 2. Because if he could already outrun Sonic, why would he need to make shoes to do it later then? Well, quite simply, Eggman Island exploded at the end, and we can assume that this is where he kept this vehicle that he used in order to outrun Sonic. And since we don't see him taking this vehicle and saving it from the exploding Eggman Island, we can assume that it was scrapped there and he no longer had it. Which is why I have it taking place before the original Sonic the Hedgehog game, as most people theorize. Now, referring back to the original timeline, we can see that in the Hero is Defeated timeline, I had the 3 Sega Sonic games, at least that existed at the time: Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car, Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter, and Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop. However, Tails is actually in the game Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop, yet Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is actually when Sonic first meets Tails, which means that Popcorn Shop would have had to take place after that, which was mentioned right here in this sentence. Sonic Origin confirmed that Sonic CD is before Sonic 2, that's true. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is another universe. It has problems and contradictions with the game continuity. The manuals and Sonic Origins confirm that there is no game in between Sonic 2 and 3. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Beam Machine is another universe. It is actually the same universe as the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic and Knuckles takes place in the same time as Sonic 3, hence them being connected into the game Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And they just said that's a French comic, which is another universe. And what they're referring to here is this Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog comic series, which was originally placed in the main games timeline, but is non-canon or canon to its own universe, which is why it is placed somewhere else due to a split. Tails Adventures was long before Sonic met Tails, so we can see right here that is why Tails Adventures is placed before the original Sonic the Hedgehog, before Sonic 2, and even before Sega Sonic the Hedgehog being the first game in the main timeline. The manuals of both Tails Sky Patrol and Sonic Labyrinth confirm that they happen at the same time, and Sonic Schoolhouse is another universe. I'll get to that in a minute because Sonic Schoolhouse placing is actually pretty interesting, and I'll get back to that a little, and obviously Sonic Underground is also a separate universe. Then in this paragraph they were actually mentioning the timeline split after Generations, but actually leading into Sonic Generations I have a timeline merging and a timeline branch, which I'll explain what those are and why I have them included there in a minute when I get to the game Sonic Generations. And then the final thing that they mentioned is simply just that Sonic Boom is a different universe. So if you want to read over everything that they said, I'll have it listed in the pinned comment in case you just want to see all of that. But now let's get into the visual part of the timeline. Once again, we have Tails' adventure at the very beginning of the timeline, and then Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, and then the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, followed by Sonic CD, which once again was confirmed to take place before Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, which was confirmed to take place directly after Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Then obviously we have Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, and we'll go over Episode 2 in a little bit, and then we can see that this is when we get a timeline branching off and merging down. So if we come down here, we can see that there is another one, and that is it merging down into Sonic Generations. So that's when we see actually classic Sonic from right after Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1. He is actually then transported to the game Sonic Generations, and that's what this merging over here actually means. And we can see the later merging is just for Sonic Forces. We can see classic Sonic is right here once again, but one game takes place in between the two times that Sonic is transported to the future, and that game is Sonic Mania. So then we can see right over here, this is where I have Sonic Schoolhouse. It's actually placed as a timeline split in between Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 and Sonic Mania. However, it is after the branch leading into a merging with Sonic Origins, because it technically takes place after Sonic Origins. Let me explain. So there are many contradictions with Sonic Schoolhouse, and it was many times said to be in an entirely different universe and non-canon to the main universe, which is technically included this way since it is a timeline split leading off into a different universe. However, the reason it is actually here is if we go back to the end of Sonic Origins, after being defeated, the two Eggmans, Classic Eggman and Modern Eggman, actually discuss why they keep losing to Sonic. And Classic Eggman says that maybe he would become a teacher since he loves telling people what to do. Now, this was just a simple joke that they mentioned here, but we know that if he were to actually become a teacher, that would cause the rest of these games to have never happened, the Sonic's Schoolhouse universe. So, if, say, Classic Eggman decides to become a teacher, Sonic, obviously being faster, would maybe get to it first, and that's why we can see Eggman trying to steal the answers from Sonic in the Sonic Schoolhouse game. However, maybe he decides not to become a teacher and to keep challenging Sonic, which would lead us into Sonic Mania, which once again would later merge into Sonic Forces. But after that, if we just keep going on with the classic era, we get Sonic the Hedgehog 2 8-bit, which is actually an entirely different game with entirely different lore, even though it's titled the same thing. It's a little bit confusing, but bear with me. If we just move on, we get Sonic Chaos, and then once again Sonic Labyrinth and Tails Sky Patrol, which were confirmed to take place at the same time, and then Sonic Spinball, and the next episode of Sonic the Hedgehog 4, and then if we look down here, we can see that it also says episode Metal here, and this is when Metal Sonic actually returns, having been trapped on Little Planet following Sonic's CD. So then moving on, we get Sonic Drift and Sonic Drift 2, and then Sonic Triple Trouble, and then we get the same game Sonic Superstars, which, while actually being released in the modern era of the Sonic games, goes way back in time and takes place during the classic era, just like Sonic Mania did up there. And then we got Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic Blast, which once again are completely different games with completely different storylines, despite having such similar titles. And then we get the Knuckles Chaotix game and Sonic Championship, also known as Sonic the Fighters, and finally Sonic R, the placement of which in the modern or classic era is completely unknown. The design used for Sonic in the game actually looks kind of like a mixture between the two designs for classic and modern Sonic, and it was never confirmed whether this actually takes place within the classic or modern era, which is why I have this right here showing that this is the end of the classic era and the beginning of the modern era, but it takes place halfway through Sonic R because this is kind of a middle ground, or just like that little gray area in between the two. So then moving on after this, we get Sonic Adventure and then later Sonic Adventure 2, and I did include Sonic Shuffle in here since it was never actually confirmed to be non-canon. Its canonicity is still debatable, and I might change it to a different universe or even put it back in this universe if we get more information on the subject. But then just moving on, we get Sonic Advance and Sonic Advance 2 with Sonic Heroes right after that, and then Shadow the Hedgehog starting off Shadow's debut and Sonic Battle having him meet Sonic in this game. Then we get Sonic Advance 3 and Sonic 06, which is canon, along with Sonic Rush, which is confirmed to take place after it, followed by Sonic Rush Adventures and Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, and Sonic Free Riders. Then we get Sonic Rivals and Sonic Rivals 2, Sonic and the Secret Rings, and then Sonic Unleashed, Sonic and the Black Knight, and then you'll notice that we have a merging right here, right before Sonic Colors and Generations take place. So if we move down into this merging, we get the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing games, which include not only Sonic, but many other characters from many other Sega games. And now I only included 4 of the different universes. I might add some more in if I get around to it, but I'm going to go over these relatively fast because this is the Sonic timeline, not just a full Sega timeline. So first off, we're just starting with the Monkey Ball games with Super Monkey Ball 2, Super Monkey Ball Jr., Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll, Super Monkey Ball Adventure, Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, Super Monkey Ball Tip and Tilt, Super Monkey Ball Tip and Tilt 2, Super Monkey Ball Step and Roll, Super Monkey Ball 3D, Super Monkey Ball Banana Split, Super Monkey Ball Bounce, and Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. And this is obviously in the Monkey Ball era. Merging down into the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, just like all of the rest of these, including the Alex Kidd timeline with Alex Kidd Miracle World, Alex Kidd The Lost Stars, Alex Kidd High Tech World, Alex Kidd BMX Trail, Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, and Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, with this all taking place in the Miracle era. So next we get the Fantasy Zone, with Fantasy Zone, Fantasy Zone 2, The Tears of Opa Opa, Fantasy Zone Maze, Fantasy Zone Gear, and Super Fantasy Zone in the Fantasy era. Then next we move on to the Puzzle and Action timeline with Bonanza Bros, Puzzle and Action Tant R, Puzzle and Action Ikeden R, and Puzzle and Action Treasure Hunt, obviously in the era of Puzzle and Action, which all once again merge down into the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing and Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed games. So moving on from that split, getting back into the mainline Sonic timeline and universe, we get Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, which I explained the rest of these mergings over here, which once again later then leads into Sonic Schoolhouse that we have right down here. So then moving on, we get Sonic Lost World, Sonic Prime, which is confirmed canon, and we don't know the exact placement. I just put it obviously right after Sonic Lost World. All we know is that it takes place sometime after Sonic Advance 3. Then we get Team Sonic Racing and Sonic Forces, followed by Sonic Forces Speed Battle, and then the Sonic Frontiers Prologues, Convergence, and Divergence, obviously leading into Sonic Frontiers. So then finally we get the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, in which it has been confirmed that Sonic Dream Team takes place afterwards, confirming that Sonic was actually not killed in the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog game. But then we reach the end right now with Sonic Dream Team. That concludes the main timeline, but we are not finished. You may have noticed another line out here that actually ends right down here. And what this is it means that it's one installment that actually takes place over a very elongated amount of time, which actually begins with the original Sonic the Hedgehog game and ends with Sonic Forces. And what that is the Sonic IDW 2017 comic series that takes place over almost the entire length of the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. If we zoom out here, we can see just how far this goes. You may have noticed these other timelines up here that we can see, and you may have noticed that I mentioned a few of these already. So if we just start out from left to right, we get the main Archie universe, in which we obviously just get the ongoing Archie comic series, and then the other comic series that take place within that, like Sonic Universe, and then we get the Worlds Collide and Worlds Unite comics, which are actually the result of a merging of 10 completely different timelines. Now we can see that all of these just go off page, since the rest of these timelines and these different universes I will not be going over in this video and are actually unfinished. However, there is a Mega Man timeline in planning as well as a Street Fighter timeline in planning, which are both two of the ones included in these mergings. So look out for videos on that. But anyway, that now concludes the Archie universe and the Archie comic series. So now we move over to the movie series, which I mentioned earlier, where we get the 2020 movie, and then there's actually a one-shot prequel comic to the Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and then there's a clip known as Sonic Drone Home leading into the Knuckles TV series, and then Sonic the Hedgehog 3 will be added right down here once it comes out. So next we get the Sonic the comic series, and then over here is the Sonic the Hedgehog 1996 movie, and then moving down we get the Sonic Boom universe, starting out with Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, Sonic Dash 2 Sonic Boom, and then Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, which all take place together in the same universe, but over another elongated period of time, which is what these lines over here mean. We get the Sonic Boom comic series and the Sonic Boom TV series. So then once again we get Sonic Eraser right here, and then the two Sega Pico games, Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World and Tails and the Music Maker. Then we get Sonic Underground, which also includes the Sonic Underground Archie comics in that as well, within that same thing. And then simply Sonic Dash, the Sonic Adventures comic series, and then we get the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog along with Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which actually take place in the same universe. And then the two Sonic X series, the comic series, and then the TV series, taking place over the exact same amount of time. So then if we move on over here, we get the other Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure game, game, Sonic Sadam, which is just an old TV series which got this other nickname because of the time that it aired. And then we get these other Sega Sonic games that are uncanon, like Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car, Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter, Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop, and then the new one that was actually not included in the original timeline, which we can see right here, is actually Sega Sonic Cotton Candy Scramble. So then in the next universe, we get Sonic Pinball Party, and then we get Sonic Runners and Sonic Runners Adventure, obviously in the same universe here, and Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood. Moving into the final universe that we're going to mention here, which starts off with the Sonic Cafe games, which includes many different sports games. So this is mainly just the Sonic sports games, in which we get Sonic Athletics and then the Sonic at the Olympic games with these two right here, as a timeline split of whether there is actually a merging with the Mario timeline. We can see that's what this line over here means, is that they actually merged, and we get Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games Sochi 2014, Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, and finally, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. All the way over here concluding the timeline. So I actually have a completed Super Mario Bros. Timeline and a video on it, which you can click on right up there in the corner there, or you can wait till the end and it will be included in the end screen. Another way you can view it is if you go down in my website, which is linked in the description. You can see that timeline, as well as this new Sonic the Hedgehog timeline, and many other timelines, including that of The Legend of Zelda and Earthbound and Undertale. So that finally concludes today's video. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like down below and subscribe with the notifications bell on so that you can be notified of all of my future videos as soon as they come out. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.